Hello everyone, and welcome to this maker workshop. In this workshop, I'm going to show you how to make different leaves, and we're actually just using these two colors of crepe paper. We'll be making a very detailed anemone leaf, a stem of Salal, some Ruscus leaves, two different colors of Myrtle, daffodil leaves, and some lily grass. In another workshop, I'm going to take all 6 of these different pieces of greenery and show you how to integrate them into a gorgeous spring bouquet with these flowers. So let's get started. To make all of our greenery, we'll be using the Juniper and the Cypress. I also have some Fusible Web to make some double-sided, my 24 gauge paper covered wire, and I'm using this art glitter glue, but you can also use the Anemones brand. For tools, I'm using my curling tool, the needle nose pliers and wire cutters. I have on hand a pair of detail scissors. If you're not using the cutting machine, these are the best ones to use. And then I always keep on hand a pair of these needle nose tweezers, especially if I'm trying to get all of my tiny pieces off the cutting mat. For the anemone leaves, I'm using the Juniper paper, and you can cut this out with the cutting machine. It's very detailed. If you're cutting it out by hand, I do have a simpler pattern. I also have 2 wires, which are 18 gauge, and I'll go ahead and cut these in half. I'm designing these leaves so that they make this full stem, and you can see there's 4 leaves on a stem, and this makes it much easier if you're doing an arrangement to tuck them into your bouquet. You'll take your glue. For this case, I'll go ahead and take the point off because I'm going to slide my wire in. I always like to put it at an angle so that my hand can just drop it down super easy. So I'm pinching it at the base of the leaf and then adding some glue. And very delicately putting that on the edge and overlapping it with the second half. The nice thing about working with this white glue is you have a bit of time to arrange it and make sure everything's lined up. And the most important thing is to make sure that you pinch that really tight so that you get a nice seal. If your points don't come together, that's okay. You can just snip them off, clean it up a bit. And I'm going to pinch the base, just roll it around, just to make that nice and clean. And I'll do the same thing to the others. These leaves are ready, they're dry, and I'll take my roll of crepe paper and just cut about a 1/2 inch strip on the end here. And this is how I'm going to attach them together. So I'll start with a bit of glue on the end, and I'm going to wrap very delicately just the top, maybe 1/2 inch to inch. And as I move down, I'll put another leaf right here. So you can see I'm going to cover the base of that with my next twist. Be careful not to get too much glue. I think I got a bit too much. And now I'm just going to add some glue right onto the stem. Bring that down a couple wraps, and then I'll place the next one. So you can see the leaves are not that far apart as I move down the stem. Maybe just a 1/2 inch. But you want to make sure and get the paper around the base of each leaf. And you'll wrap that all the way down to the end. And now I'm just taking the wire and bending it outwards. so that it looks like this. So you'll want to make 6 or 12 of these depending on how large you want your bouquet. For the Ruscus leaf, I'm also using the Juniper crepe paper, and there are 16 leaves per stem. I have my 24 gauge wire, and I'll just start at the top, add some glue to that base of the stem, and wrap it around the wire. We're going to go back and add some shape to these once they're dry, but for now we're just going to do one right after the other down the stem. Same thing, just add some glue, and I'm placing it right underneath the other leaf. You can see the distance. So as you move down the wire, when you wrap the leaves around the wire, it will actually cover the wire completely. Once you've attached all of the leaves, you can use your crepe paper strips and wrap the rest of the stem. Once your leaves are dry, use your curling tool and very gently curl these leaves outward. So you can make either 6 or 12 Ruscus leaves depending on how large you want your bouquet. For the Salal leaves, I'm using the Juniper crepe paper, and I have 4 of these wires. I'm going to cut 3 of them in half and leave 1 long. And I've laid out all my pieces. You can see how they're lined up and ready to go. Some of them are a bit curled because of the paper. That's okay, they'll flatten out. And you'll just want to be sure that you've cut this on the grain as indicated on the pattern so that you have this beautiful V cut. So with my longest wire, I'll start with a small leaf. I'll measure and pinch. Take the tip off of my glue. Whoop. Try not to get too much. And then I'll place that right on the edge of one leaf with the other leaf on top. And I'm using the longest wire on the small leaf because this will be my top leaf, and I'll be adding the other leaves down here on the side. Go ahead and clip the tip to clean it up. And set that aside and let it dry. And you'll go ahead and do the same thing with all the rest of the leaves. Be sure and pinch the centers together so they become really sealed. So now I have 3 larger leaves and 4 smaller leaves, and I'm going to take this strip of crepe paper, and I'll start with the longest wire, which will be my top leaf, and I'm going to start wrapping just the top. So I would say about 2 inches. So I'll tear that off, and I'm going to do the same for each of my leaves. We're going to wrap about the first top inch to 2 inches. All the stems are ready. We'll start with the one with the longest stem again. And for this, I want to have some of my stems showing. I'll start about 1 inch below the second leaf. And then I'm attaching it with crepe paper. I've wrapped it about 1/2 inch. Add in a third leaf. And then I'll just keep going down the stem. I'm going to go ahead and bend the tip of my wire up to meet the other wires, and then finish covering that with crepe paper. Now using my fingers, I'm going to bend all the leaves out. You can arrange them as you go. And you can also go in and just add a bit of stretch to the edge to give it more shape. And there's my Salal. I recommend that you make at least 6 of these for a small bouquet, and then up to 12 if you're doing a large bouquet. For the myrtle, you can use either the Juniper or the Cypress. I actually like using both because it adds a little bit more of that bright spring green into our bouquet. Here's the myrtle made in the Cypress, so now let's make it in the Juniper. I have my strip cut out. For each one, you'll just need 1 wire. So I'll start with adding a bit of glue to the very top of my strip. Be sure not to add too much. You don't want it to be soggy. Place the wire on the tip and then wrap that really tight. Make sure your top is very tight. You can pinch it to make sure it's secure, because as we move down the stem, we'll need it to hold. Now I'll start adding glue to my wire. And just a little bit. I like using the tip of my glue to kind of spread it out a bit. And just roll your strip right onto the wire. It's a little trickier with all these tiny leaves, and you can see that I'm not moving it too fast down the wire. I'm really stacking the leaves fairly tight, and I'm wanting that to be nice and snug as I move it down. You can kind of pinch it as you go. I'm rolling it with one hand and pinching it with the other, and also stretching just a bit. The further you get along, it gets a bit easier. We'll add some more glue. And then once you've finished wrapping your leaves, go ahead and grab the strip of crepe paper and we'll finish off the stem. The stem's fairly long. I'm going to bend up the last bit of it. I'll flatten that out. just to give it some extra strength. It's much easier to wrap the stems because you can use both fingers and not worry about crushing the leaves. So here's a stem in the Cypress and one in the Juniper. I recommend that you make at least 6 stems of the Myrtle, and if you're making a larger bouquet, 12 would be even better. For the daffodil leaves and the lily grass, I'm using both the Juniper and the Cypress, but what I've done is created this two-sided crepe paper by using this bonding web, and we have a full tutorial on how to do this. In the template, it will have 6 leaves plus 2 pieces of this grass, and the grass is actually together like this, so when you pull it apart, you actually have 2 strips. For the daffodil leaves, I'm attaching 2 of the leaves onto one wire, and I'm using a half a piece of the 24 gauge wire. You can use a heavier wire if you want to. And I'm bending it in half and then actually compressing that end to make one thicker wire. You don't need to do this if you're using an 18 gauge or a thick stem. Now you can use either the lighter side, the Cypress, or the Juniper. I try to vary it, so on this one I use the Juniper on the outside, the Cypress on the inside, and this one's Cypress on the outside and Juniper on the inside, or you can go both directions. So I'm taking my glue and just adding a bit right on the base, placing my wire in the middle, and then wrapping it around. I'm giving it a nice pinch and roll between my fingers. And I'll take the other one. You can see I'm going the opposite direction on this one. So it really does not matter. I like the variation. I'm offsetting it just a bit because I don't want it to be perfectly centered right on top of each other. Now since I have the dark on top, I'll go ahead and use the Juniper crepe paper to wrap the stem. Add a bit of glue. And then make that nice and tight and secure. And we'll finish that off at the end. Now I'll take my curling tool and just give it a very soft, gentle curve so that it has some shape. Now for my lily grass, I'm actually going to do the dark on the center and have the light on the outside. I'll do the same thing here with my wire. I'll bend it in half to make it thicker. Again, if you use a 18 gauge wire, you probably don't need to do this. You can if you'd like to. I'll add some glue, place the wire, and then I'm going to very tightly wrap this. It's going to get bulky fast, so I recommend that you move down the stem very slightly. And rather than putting glue on my wire, since there's so much that I'm wrapping, I'm actually putting glue onto the crepe paper. If you just keep it at an angle, you can see how it wraps down the wire. It's getting a bit bulky, but you can pinch it closed. You can see how it gives a bit of a gap around the wire, but just pinch it closed as you go. It's because we're bulky up here, so it makes it a little more difficult to make it tight against the wire. All right. Now I'm pinching it at the base. And since the lighter color is on the outside, I'll use my light crepe paper to wrap the stem. And there's my lily grass. It seems that when I pulled it off the mat, it gave it a nice curl, so I really don't need to add any curl, but if you need to, you can go ahead and very gently just add some shape to those pieces of grass. For our bouquet, I recommend that you do at least 4 of these lily grass and 6 of these, which would be 2 sheets, or if you want a bit extra for a larger bouquet, go ahead and do 6 of these and 9 of these, which would be 3 sheets of the double-sided paper. I picked the 6 different types of greenery because each one has a unique shape and texture, and together they really add a lot of variety of greenery into your bouquet.